the warrior ethos, coaching, and therapy. This is Warrior Leadership. This is Warrior Leadership. Oh man, we're back on another episode here. Today we're going to talk about building resilience and transforming setbacks. But real quick, before we get to the most awesome part, which is just the great conversations I get to have with DB the therapist, I want to read off my just blurb in the beginning, my general promotion. So Warrior Leadership is brought to you by Victory Leadership Coaching and Streams of Hope Behavioral Healthcare. This is home. Victory Leadership Coaching is home of the Warrior Leadership Coaching Certification and First Time Leaders course for new managers. Don't forget to check us out at victoryleadershipcoaching.com. You can also buy our books at amazon.com. The books are Why Organizations Should Develop Their Leaders, The Pocket Guide, and Warrior Leadership, The Journey from Coach to Entrepreneur. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to all of our videos on our YouTube channel and our Spotify channel. Brother, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself, Coach?
Man, you know, if I was any better, I just got done drinking my coffee. So if I was any better, I think I'd probably be close to death or something. I don't know, but you know, I'm having actually a pretty good day. Plus, I got a great chat with you before we even started this.
Yeah, that's it. Full disclosure, I'm going to be drinking from my Steelers mug here. I actually am a little disappointed because we gave the game away last night to the to a division rival, but man, they came to play like it was a Super Bowl. But yeah, man, I'm excited about having this discussion, man.
Yep, me too. So what are you doing drinking out of a mug from a team in Pennsylvania when you were over there in California?
Oh, you really want to know the backstory to that one? Well, so I actually love the idea that, I heard about when I was a kid. I used to just look at all the different teams and I'm like, which team do I really like and why? And for me, I just heard about this thing called the Steel Curtain and the Steel City. And I'm like, I think that mindset resonates with me. And I just started doing my homework and I started studying their history and just like everything about the town and just the people. And I was like, that's my kind of place. And, I just fell in love with the team, man. I've been a fan for over 30 years. And I just didn't like we didn't really, all the California teams were gone except for San Diego. I wasn't going to be a San Diego fan for sure. And so I had to find a home, man. So Pittsburgh was it. Steel City, man.
I'm not really judging, man. I don't even watch sports, so I can't really say a word. But I'm not hating. I used to watch football all the time. But anyway, we're going to talk about building resilience and transforming setbacks, and I get to have that conversation with the therapist today. So yep. I'm excited about doing that. So to you, DB, when I mentioned the phrase building resilience and transforming setbacks, what does that mean to you? Because I know you deal with this stuff with clients all the time.
Yeah. So building resilience, and when you think about it from my lens and how I look at things and what I see in my practice is oftentimes people will get out of the zone of resiliency. They will go below the zone of resiliency into what we call depressive disorder, which is, the moods that bring us down. And then above the resiliency zone is anxiety. And so different people are coming to therapy either above that zone or below that zone. And a lot of the work that I'm doing with them is helping them deal with those underlying issues, which a lot of it is rooted in trauma. And when they're able to identify and develop that emotional intelligence and awareness of what's going on underneath or above them that's causing them to go there, then we can help them get into the resiliency zone. And until they understand the underlying, what we call universal thoughts that drive them out of the resiliency zone, then they won't be resilient, which turns into a lack of productivity when it comes to work and different things like that. So when you want to, give them the tools to help them get to where they're trying to get in terms of coaching, there's this barrier or gap that, that sometimes they don't even see, and they don't have the insight, because a lot of those like sort of core beliefs, our thoughts are so deep in our unconscious mind that we don't necessarily have access to the thought that's causing us to go outside of the resiliency zone. And so in therapy, what I've seen and it's a very powerful experience to have with someone, where literally I'll give you an example of a phenomenon that happens in therapy all the time. Someone will come in my office and I'll just make a statement, because I've been like reading their notes and, kind of doing my research and just kind of looking at attachment theory and all these different things. And I'll come in and I'll have a statement already ready to say to them. And immediately when I say the statement to them, it will take them back to an experience that they suppressed.
Oh, wow.
And it's very powerful, man. Matter of fact, it literally just happened the other day. I was in the session, and the gentleman, he went back to a time when his father was in the hospital dying. He literally saw it in his mind's eye because of a statement that I made. And again, when you talk about the resiliency zone and, getting like what blocks us from not just getting in that zone, but staying in that zone consistently. It's those sort of memories, thoughts. And so in therapy, I'm helping people deal with that so I can get them to a place where they can, and then we talk about this bridge between coaching and therapy, get them to that place in coaching, because you want them to be resilient when they come to you, because you got goals that they have to, markers that they have to hit. And so if they have something holding them back, it's going to be hard, man.
Yeah, let's define that a little bit, because that's interesting. We talk about the resiliency zone, and we have, we've mentioned it quite a few times throughout our long, wonderful journey here doing podcasts together. But when I think of the resiliency zone, and I want you to correct me on what you feel it is after I give my definition here, but I kind of feel like the resiliency zone, and it's overplayed. I hear people kind of make fun of resiliency a lot because they say that, oh yeah, that's that tennis ball analogy or whatever the case may be. But when I think of somebody who is resilient, it's somebody who truly can go through a situation that is uncomfortable or potentially traumatic, and when it's all said and done, they're just as strong as they were when they went into it. And when you say the zone for resiliency, I think they have to be there in order to do that. But more than that, in order to be that person who has a resilient mindset, you have to you can't have anything holding you back. And so all of the things that you deal with in therapy are to make it so that you don't question yourself, you don't judge yourself, you don't make yourself feel like you're not enough when something happens, and all that sort of stuff. But correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of what I feel like the resiliency zone is.
Yeah. And you know what? You know what's powerful about the human mind, man? And I'm not going to get too deep into this, but I'm going to say this, which is we can suppress emotions and push ourselves in the resiliency zone and achieve success, right? What people would see as success, but then burn out and crash out on the back end of life, because those emotions and those experiences that we suppress will come back up. And so so most people, they will avoid going into therapy and dealing with the core issues because they see a measure of success. It's like they're in the resiliency zone, right? Because they have all the material success in the world, all the things that they could ever desire or want, but they're disconnected with themselves. And so he said, so that like, and there's this move to, we need to be in the resiliency zone at all times, sort of thing. And it's like, does that reinforce and encourage people to suppress their emotions, especially men? you know, and again, so that's why we have to be careful with like this idea of resiliency. And look, we understand that more than anyone in the military. We were taught to suck it up and drive on, literally. Like, and so when you tell someone to suck it up and drive on, you're telling them, push that to the unconscious part of your mind, and I don't want you to think about it anymore. Well, and then they come to you years later, and you're like, they have this goal, but then they have this deep-seated fear because they didn't process the situation. Like, we have to process stuff, and I think that, but that's the part that I did love about the military, is like doing an after actions review. And we've talked about this a lot. Like, we have to do those sort of reviews every single day. Like, at the end of my day, I'll look at my calendar and I'll say, did I accomplish all the things that I wanted to accomplish in this day? And if not, what was the thing that caused me to be set back? And again, when I'm asking those questions, it's me assessing how long was I able to stay in that resiliency zone that day, and what were the things that triggered me to get out of it. Like, I should want to do that, right? I should want to, you know what I'm saying?
But you know what? When you avoid identifying those things, then that's exactly what you do, is you push it down, you suck it up and drive on, you drink water and change your socks. You can't do that. And
Drink water.
drink water. Yes. Cheers, my friend.
Sorry.
No,
Sorry about that.
no, but when you push it down, you're right. Eventually, and this has happened to me many times, and I know it's happened to you because we've talked about this.
Yep.
So, you know, you're not transforming any sort of a setback when you're just pushing things down. You may be successful in that moment, but at some point you're gonna either implode and you're gonna become depressed and you're gonna not do anything, or you're gonna explode and you're gonna hurt everybody around you, or you're gonna make yourself look like a flying jackass. And you can't do either of those things. And the only way to avoid that is addressing the core issues that are bothering you, even if it's something so small as, you know, this person said something to me today and it kind of hurt and I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
And because that one thing, if you don't address it in the moment, it stacks up, because then there's another person that says something to you, or then you go to the DMV and you have to pay this huge godly fee for your registration, and that bothers you, but you don't say anything to anybody about it. And then everything starts bothering you and you don't know why everything is bothering you. Well, if you want to avoid it, address that first comment that somebody said to you and figure out why that bothered you, because there could be something else being associated with that. And I know I went into a big long thing about that, but you got to keep in mind that when it comes to being resilient is not pushing things down. Being resilient is being vulnerable. And you don't have to go to a therapist for that. If you know that things are starting to bother you, have a conversation with a good friend. If you have a coach, have a conversation with your coach. Anyone who you trust implicitly, have a conversation about it. Get it off your chest. Then you can move on, unless it still bothers you. But if you don't address those core issues as they come up, they stack up, and then you're to a point where you don't even know why things are bothering you. And that's when you need a great therapist such as yourself.
Right. And you know what? I agree with you 100%. Like, I think so if you deal with things in the beginning, and we're talking about cultivating resiliency, right? So cultivating is a process. And so we need to, if we get ahead of problems and issues and we work at these things over time, which, you know, one of the very simple things that we can do to really cultivate resiliency, a strategy, is we have to practice self-care. We have to, and it's so easy to, you know, especially for us, right? It's so easy to be selfless and always be thinking about other people, and, you know, this sense of duty that we have and all these things. And we get down on ourselves when we don't accomplish the mission for other people. And so we have to, if we're going to be resilient and grow, we have to sometimes be selfish, which it's hard for some people to just like sort of stomach that idea. Like, and so selfish to the sense that you place you place your self-care as a priority so you can continue to serve and continue to be that person, whoever that person is that you are, that servant leader that we talk about that so much. And so like just practicing that self-care is so important because you can't, it's funny, like when life starts lifing, as the young people would say, right? At that point, you can't like, it's harder to tap into that resiliency if you haven't been intentional about practicing taking care of yourself. And so I think that that's like the first thing that first strategy that a person would have to do to start cultivating resiliency is practice self-care. So you say, I'll ask you, Coach, what are some things that you do to practice self-care so that way you can start cultivating that resiliency, the things that you need to do like in a day to start practicing that, cultivating that resiliency?
Well, I start off my day with my affirmations, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And I do that every day. And then I make my promise to God. And that promise is, every day he wakes me up to see another day, I promise to be a better person than I was yesterday.
Right.
But then I go along and I do those regular AARs when things don't go my way. And, I understand clearly that very many things will not go my way. That's just the regular course of life. And so that's part of making sure that I don't get my feelings hurt, because when you understand that things won't always go your way, then that kind of takes emotion out of it, right? And you can come back and analyze what went right, what went wrong, and what you can do differently, which is that AAR that you just recently got done talking about, that you do at the end of every day. I do it every time something goes really crappy. But at the end of every day, I also do that overall. And, how do I become a better person? Well, is my relationship with my wife going better? Are things going great with my kids? Did I do everything I could do for my own self-care? And some of the self-care that I do, I'm able to identify when I start getting super stressed. Part of it is my breathing techniques. There's a 3-2-1 technique that I practice sometimes. Sometimes it's just closing your eyes, getting rid of all distractions, and just focusing on my breathing. And, just making sure that I get back into the moment, because oftentimes all of us, we get so caught up in why things aren't going the way they should be going. And then we're digging into the future, and then we're getting lost into what could be and all this other stuff, when sometimes you just need to close your eyes, take deep breaths, focus on your breath going in, focus on your breath going out, and just come back to normal. Come back to earth, man, because at that point you're so far from earth that you might be sitting on Mars and not even know it.
Oh man, and that's good. Honestly, I would say that that's the foundational building block. We're talking about strategies to cultivate resiliency and overcoming setbacks. Like, that's foundational. Like, if that's not happening, what you're describing, which is the same thing for me, my process: wake up, pray, do my devotional, go to the gym. And also, I'll add this: journaling about my day and my experiences, right? And I've noticed this. I've literally went back and read my journal over a period of years. And every time I don't do that, what I just described to you, I'm out of the zone of resiliency. I start to slowly move out of the zone. Like, maybe I've built up enough resilience where, all right, I could get through the day, I'm good. But I'll notice that, like, you miss one day, and then all of a sudden, it's easier to slack off on something else. And then you realize, like, oh, you start to have this feeling on the inside, that emotion. And again, that's like that precursor, like, all right, if I'm feeling more emotive about anything, especially the negative emotions, then I'm definitely moving out of that zone of resilience. But It's because I wasn't practicing those self-care practices that I just talked about, right? So we can't even get into we can't look, coach, we can't even get into any of the other strategies unless we do the foundational things. And I'm gonna promise you this. There will be people that come into therapy and I'm like, this costs too much money for me to tell you to do the things that you know you should already be doing, right?
Oh
So
my
like
gosh, yes.
if I'm like, I shouldn't have to tell you the basic things that you know you need to do. Though, like you just mentioned breathing exercises. You know how many people will argue you down, like, oh, breathing isn't gonna work, writing in a journal isn't gonna work. Okay, you're telling me what's not gonna work, but you're not, what are you doing to actually make it better? And I don't want to feel like I'm venting and ranting here, but like there, you would be surprised the number of people who
No, I
will pay
wouldn't.
good money. They pay good money, and it's like you're not doing the basic things, the foundational things.
No, I wouldn't.
You know?
No, I wouldn't. And you know what? Most people live in this zone where they just don't know what's going wrong. But then they're constantly having conversations with people saying, oh man, I know I should be doing this. I know I should be doing this. I know I should be doing this.
Right.
Well, then why the hell aren't you? You know, if you want to be intentional about stuff, sometimes if you know you're getting angry and you know you don't want to be angry anymore, well, I think the most, even without the journaling, I think the most wonderful thing you can do for yourself is when you feel that burning in your chest or your face getting hot or your neck starting to get hot, walk away, close your eyes, and start breathing. Focus on your breath, and then start really thinking about where those emotions are coming from. Oh my gosh. Coming from somebody who used to scream his family into a corner whenever I would get upset because of my post-traumatic stress disorder, you know, just small things like things being left on the floor or, you know, just, I can't even describe not cleaning your room or, you know, just saying one thing to talk back at me, either me or my wife, you know, that would just cause me to just explode. And I never understood why. It wasn't until, I met with a wonderful therapist at Fort Wainwright, Alaska. I'm not going to mention her name. She told me just to start breathing and think about it. I would sit in a room by myself. I would walk away. I'd be screaming for a couple minutes, but then I would walk away and I would just say, why did that just happen? And I would just close my eyes and start breathing. And you'd be surprised how quick the answers start coming to you.
Oh man, telling you. And it's science, coach.
Yes.
It's really not an art. It's a science. Literally, when you start breathing, you get oxygen to your brain. And so now you can process with your frontal lobe. It's a science. It's not, that's what I'm saying. It's not up for debate. And so for me, like look, and this is the thing. We're talking about strategies to basically get in the resiliency zone.
Yes.
Practice those type of things even when nothing is going wrong.
You're right.
Don't wait until, don't wait until, don't wait until, listen, don't look, coach, we're both warriors. Do we wait until the enemy starts attacking to say, oh, maybe we should start training?
No.
Of course not. We train. So that's what, like, people are like, somebody would ask, like, why are you out here, you know, doing these dry fire exercises with Miles gear and all this stuff? Because we're simulating a battle.
Yep.
We're simulating what could happen so that way we can start working through the plan in our mind, what we will do if we're in these situations, and we talk through it. And so on an individual level, we have to do that too. And it just brings me to that next point of developing that growth mindset, man.
Yeah.
After we have done those self-care activities, we have to have a growth mindset. Because what's the opposite of a growth mindset? And I think it works, that the opposite of a growth mindset works against this zone of resiliency. We can't be resilient without a growth mindset.
Oh, for sure. And, you know, in addition to that statement, you know, we talk about emotional intelligence and how that helps you succeed in all areas of your life. Well, that's just another form of mindfulness. And, you know, the breathing techniques that we just got done talking about, Don't you think that's emotional regulation?
Oh, 100%.
So if
100%.
if everybody believes in emotional intelligence, and that's one of the most popular things to be trained in the workforce today, then people that don't believe in therapy, don't believe in mindfulness, they start talking trash about, oh gosh, breathing, what blah blah. They start talking trash about all of that. Well, guess what? If you're so stressed out about everything that could or could not happen, try the breathing. I guarantee that those outbursts will happen a lot less. Go ahead.
But coach, think about what you're saying right now. That's why I just transitioned to that next point of growth mindset. The human being that is negative and cynical about every single tool that you try to provide them to do self-care. It's now we know that, oh, they don't have a growth mindset. So like, and again, we were just discussing this before we got on this call. That person is probably in the pre-contemplation state of change.
Yes.
If a person doesn't have a growth mindset, meaning a growth mindset is, I see the negative that's happening around me, but I'm going to reframe that into something positive. I'm going to have a positive mindset about it, even when it's negative. And watch this. Shakespeare said this: these were the best of times, these were the worst of times. And so when you think about that, what are you left with? You're left with, do I have a growth mindset or a deficit mindset? And again, when we say it over and over again, glass half empty or glass half full. As simple as that might seem, that is powerful in terms of being in the resiliency zone or not in the resiliency zone. If you want to stay depressed, if you want to stay anxious, if you want your post-traumatic stress disorder to stay wherever it is at the level that it's at, keep thinking the way that you're thinking. And I guarantee you that any person will continue to feel the same way that they feel. You know how many times that I've been throughout my life, and I've seen it over and over again in my own life. We're talking about transforming setbacks. To be honest, in the most difficult times of my life, I've been the most resilient.
That's where you learn resiliency, man.
Yes. So it's like, to be honest, and I can't believe I'm getting ready to say this, but it's true. When things actually start going good, it's like I'm so used to thriving in chaos that somehow, like, even though there's enough chaos around me, I promise you, sometimes I create it just so that way I can push myself, right? It's like I've heard about athletes doing this, right? Where they come up with this sick, twisted trick in their head where they create this opposition. Like they wait for somebody to say something to them. It's like when Jordan was, I think it was like the flu game or something like that. And one of these players, they made a remark or they said something to him. And everybody who knows Jordan was like, you never talk trash to Michael Jordan. And so he uses that as like the fuel to get him out. And again, you think about that, that's growth mindset. Like, I'm not going to let you tell me I'm a loser. I'm a winner. I'm a champion. And when he starts thinking in his mind that he's a champion, guess what happens?
He becomes a champion.
He becomes a champion. What a concept. Like,
oh, man.
Look, man, to me, I'm going to be honest with you. I get excited talking about this kind of stuff because it almost seems like it's like magical. It's magical, the fact that you can literally make statements. You talked about doing your affirmations. You can make statements and build yourself up. And the next thing you know, the powerful thing is, Coach, when that affirmation becomes reality.
Oh, I've already had plenty of them become real. Do you think I say the same affirmations every day and have been for years? Absolutely not. Because
no.
Sometimes from yesterday to today, I have to make a new affirmation because something happens that makes that old one seem like you're talking to a chump. And so you gotta change it so that you're growing. But let's talk more about growth mindset, because when we're talking about transforming setbacks, you have to have that growth mindset. And let's start from the very beginning. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. As a matter of fact, my reel yesterday even said it. Knowing what you just got done saying, that you can speak something into an existence and it's true. Same can be said about knowing that you can have a shitty day, go to sleep, wake up the next morning, and create a whole new existence for yourself, by just being intentional. In addition to that, a setback is something that we make up, actually. There are many hurdles that we have to go through in life. I mean, we have to pay our taxes, we have to pay our bills. I mean, all of those things can be really, really difficult when you're making $15 an hour. But how many people do it? Those are setbacks. But then they still end up laughing and joking at dinner with their family. Don't you think that that's taking those setbacks and reframing them into positive thoughts? That's growth mindset. Now, what are you going to do to get past that to become even more successful? Unless that's your definition for success. You can be very successful just getting by, and some people are super happy that way. But what we're talking about when it comes to growth, everything that happens that you don't know how to overcome, you pick up a book, you have a conversation, you go through a class, whatever the case may be, and you don't just let things happen. You don't let life happen to you. You let life happen for you, because you learn and grow as a result of the things that happen. And you're basically coming up with you're learning tools all the time on how to overcome new things that tend to almost set you back, but they don't set you back. They give you opportunities for growth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you want to talk about growth mindset. People who grow all the time don't look at anything as something that holds them back.
Right.
They look at everything as an opportunity.
Right. And you know what? To me, that's like that's the secret. that's
This
the
is the
secret
to life.
Yeah, I'm serious, man. Like people, like honestly, like people try to like figure out like, oh, what's my purpose? All this other stuff. Like, they get real deep, and it's just like, dude, like your purpose is to have a growth mindset. Like when you have a growth mindset, whatever the specific details of your purpose is, will be revealed in time. But people, we're so, and again, we're impatient, and we allow our emotions to dictate, and because we're pleasure seeking animals. And so if we don't have that immediate gratification and that immediate pleasure, we start seeking for this comfort in these uncomfortable situations. And the reality is that it's possible to be in the resiliency zone, but things not go your way today. Like, yeah, you might not you may get out in the arena of life and you may lose that deal today or that battle today, so to speak. But the war is going to still be won, and the battle tomorrow will be won. You may lose a battle. And I think that, again, that it's everything that you're saying, Coach, which is, can you take one on the chin and then still keep getting back up? But it starts with the way I think about that. If I change my thought process about that, then I can change my whole life. Like, and not just, what's powerful about that is, and I've seen it happen in my own life, is me overcoming my setbacks. It's like this light emanates off of you, and it helps others overcome their setbacks. Do you know how many people that, honestly, I've gotten business off of purely, I've asked people, I ask over and over again, why did you choose me? Why did you come work with me as a therapist? And you know how many people have told me, I saw your smile. Your smile. They didn't mention, like, I may have been sitting up here worrying about, is my grammar okay on the profile, all this stuff, like getting real deep about it. And the person said, it was your smile. I knew that you were genuine, and I knew that you cared, which to me translates into they know that I've overcome setbacks. They know that I'm not just sitting here talking about tools and strategies, that I actually use them. And I'm also transparent enough to acknowledge that the times when I don't use the tools, going back to the self-care, and I start getting into that stinking thinking, because I'm human, right? Just because I'm a therapist, don't mean that every once in a while I start having a defeatist mindset. And I know every time I start thinking like a defeatist, I'm like, I know where this is going to lead. I've literally caught again, I'm a journaler. I caught myself in my journal, like, why was I thinking like that at that time? Now, look, and seriously, like you look back over the setback and you're like, oh, that's why that dark cloud in that season felt even darker. Like it was already dark, right? But it was even darker because of that one sentence that I said right there. And for me, I encourage people to journal for that reason. I know I'm beating a dead horse with this journaling thing, but it's so important because again, we're talking about mindset, and mindset has to deal with our thoughts.
Yeah.
And look, there's a scripture that says this, man. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if I'm not tracking what I'm thinking and saying, because I'm just sitting here like verbal vomiting all day long, just talking negative in my mind, and I don't put that on a page where I can actually objectively see it, then guess what? I'm keeping myself out of that resiliency zone by ruminating on those negative thoughts. And there's a very powerful thing that happens when you can look outside of yourself. Like imagine this. If you heard someone making a negative statement that you know is not a growth mindset, you're going to catch that a lot quicker than you would catch it in your own mind, correct? And so writing it on a page or seeing it somewhere, you're like, wait a minute, I don't agree with that. You stop and you pause and you say, am I really going to co-sign with that negative, self-defeating thought process? Absolutely not. I'm going to have this growth mindset that keeps me right there in that resiliency zone. It's like, hey, we running this marathon. We got to keep this even pace, because the minute you try to pick up the pace just a little bit, by the time you get to mile 10, I promise you're going to feel it. So we have to run our race at our pace, man.
That's right. And that is different for everybody. And, you know, for me, the journaling didn't happen until I could bring myself into the moment. But you know what? I know many people who they couldn't even get themselves into the moment until they started journaling. And I think journaling is a very powerful thing. If you want to identify what's happening with you, you know, you're going to be able to put it on paper a lot faster than you will be able to say it out loud. That's not everybody, but most people that I've come into contact with, they're definitely able to write it down quicker than they can verbalize it. And sometimes they can't even verbalize it or write it down on paper until they've been able to get themselves out of the noise and think about it using mindfulness techniques.
Yeah.
But I think this was a great call, man. I mean, we've gone almost 10 minutes over, but I think the time that we spent addressing this topic, I hope very much that the audience appreciates the extra time that we put into it. But really what I hope is that anybody who's listening to this or seeing this, you know, I hope you put a comment below and let us know what you liked about it and what else you would like to hear, because we really want to be as valuable as we can possibly be to you, our network. So just let us know. DB, you have any closing comments for the group?
You know, I just want to say to people, embrace change. You know, John F. Kennedy said this, you know, change is the law of life. And just respect that in this life, you're going to have transition and changes and things like that. Be okay. Reframe your relationship with the idea of change and start to be okay with it. Be okay with change and stop resisting it, because resistance only prolongs the journey and makes it even harder. And so we ought not make things harder on ourselves. And I'm actually talking to myself when I say that.
Oh man, you know what? You're right, and you're talking to me too. We all say wonderful things. And, you know, we can get off the phone with somebody. And I saw a reel about this the other day, actually, and it kind of brought it to fruition for me because it's true. You know, when we give somebody else great advice, sometimes we get off the phone and we're like, man, I need that advice. Where did I even come up with that? But that's because when we give advice to somebody else, that's not always, you know, meant for us. They made the analogy of, you know, when fruit is growing on a tree, that fruit is not for the tree. The fruit is for the people passing by that tree. And so the knowledge isn't always necessarily for us. You know, that wisdom is given to us by God, and it's meant for other people. And that's a pretty powerful statement, and I didn't come up with that. I wish I would have saved that reel because that was profound to me.
Oh my.
I know, right? But
yeah,
anyway,
good.
Yeah, it is good. But I had to share that because of what you said. It just made me think of it. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, it doesn't matter. But if you like it, share it with the audience or comment below. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's grow this podcast. Let's get the word out on why mental health matters and why coaching and therapy should be a complement to one another rather than two opposing ideas. Thanks, DB, and thank you to the audience.